Can I get my husband or wife deported? Some people facing the emotional stress of divorce ask if they can have their immigrant spouse deported in addition to ending the marriage. The intersection of immigration and divorce law raises strong feelings, but also reveals significant legal limits. While the idea might seem like a way to resolve complicated relationship issues, actually getting the Department of Homeland Security to act is very difficult, especially if the situation doesn't involve extreme circumstances. Most people are surprised to learn how limited the government's authority is in these cases, and what a spouse actually needs to prove in order for deportation to be even remotely possible. Legal grounds for deporting a spouse. The legal authority for deportation depends heavily on the spouse's immigration status. If they are undocumented or their visa has expired, they could technically be reported, but simply calling the Department of Homeland Security is unlikely to lead to any action. The DHS tip line is more concerned with serious crimes like human trafficking or fraud, not basic undocumented status. If the spouse is in the U.S. on conditional status, typically a 2-year period before permanent residency is granted, and the marriage was fraudulent, then things change. Under Immigration and Nationality Act 237, A.1.g, an immigrant can be deported if it's proven that their visa was obtained through fraud related to the marriage. This includes marriages entered into for immigration benefits alone and terminated within 2 years. But proving marriage fraud isn't easy. The facts must be so egregious that a state court would consider annulment, not just divorce. Fraud needs to go to the essentials of the marital relationship. A past Illinois case said that unless the fraud completely undermines the ability to be a spouse, annulment isn't justified. That's the kind of proof the Attorney General would look for in considering deportation. Once permanent residency is granted, the chance of deportation drops significantly. If the person has become a U.S. citizen, it's nearly impossible. Only something as extreme as treason might revoke citizenship. Can I get my husband or wife deported? Yes, but only under very limited, specific conditions. If your spouse is still in conditional status and there's clear evidence of marriage fraud, you can report this to the Department of Homeland Security. In that case, the agency might cancel their green card. However, if your spouse has already secured permanent residency or citizenship, it's nearly impossible. At that stage, there is no clear process to initiate deportation unless extreme fraud can be proven and possibly supported by a state court finding. Reporting your spouse simply for being undocumented is not effective. The DHS is not pursuing cases unless there's fraud, crime, or danger to public safety. And if you're thinking of deportation as a way to get revenge, even seasoned attorneys recommend moving on. As the old Spanish proverb says, living well is the best revenge. Divorcing a spouse after deportation. If your spouse has already been deported, divorce is still possible in Illinois. As long as you have lived in the state for at least 90 days, you can proceed. You'll need to send your spouse the appearance and final judgment of dissolution by mail or email. Once they return it, you can file it in Cook County. Your spouse does not have to be physically present for the final hearing. You do, either in person or via Zoom. But if you don't know where your spouse is, you can ask the court for permission to serve them by publication instead. It's also important to note that deportation alone does not dissolve a marriage. A formal divorce process is still required. Whether your spouse is in the country or abroad, the same legal steps apply, and working with a lawyer can help make the process smoother. For those who believe they've been victims of marriage fraud, remember that this can be a criminal offense under 8 U.S.C.S. Section 1325. But proving it requires clear, documented evidence and often the involvement of a state court. If you're considering these actions, contact a qualified attorney who understands both immigration and divorce procedures. A law firm familiar with these intersections can provide clarity on what's possible and what's not. For help navigating divorce, especially when immigration is involved, contact the law office of Russell D. Knight at 773-334-6311 or visit them at 1165 North Clark Street, number 700, Chicago, Illinois, 60610, United States.